This is Georgina Rose, and welcome to the Postmodern Iconoclast, a podcast that helps you destroy and break the false icons and idols of the digital age in search of a more authentic, esoteric spirituality. On this podcast, we discuss ideology, esoterica, and everything on the fringes of mysticism, religion, and related topics. Welcome to the show. This is your host, Georgina Rose, and in this episode, we're going to talk about a word that I feel like gets thrown around a lot, but is often thrown around without a meaning. And that would be the term manifestation. So if you've spent any amount of time on the internet or really in any spiritual adjacent conversation in your entire life, you've heard the word manifestation or manifesting or manifest as a thing that people do to make things happen. But what I think often gets missed is, what does this actually mean? How does it actually work? And how to do it effectively? Like, what is it beyond the buzzword? So I've brought a guest on who is well versed in this subject to help break it down for us so that we can have a true understanding of what it means and, of course, sort of the metaphysics behind it. So can you introduce yourself, tell us who you are, what your background is, and all of that?
Yes, so my name is Anna Gleason, better known on social media as Witchy Girl Anna. TikTok being my main platform, but I also do Instagram and YouTube. And basically, what I preach and share about on my social media, a lot is witchcraft and esoteric based, but a lot is also manifestation and how to create the life you want based off of your own mindset. So that is a little bit about me and my niche. So hopefully today we can go over some points on, breaking down what it actually is versus kind of the buzzword that it's become and how to actually manifest and not like, the mix up that a lot of people are seeing.
Yeah, I feel like as spirituality has become more popular in the mainstream, we've seen this with a lot of different terms, right? I don't think it's just a manifestation thing. I think in general, like, a lot of spiritual terms that have gained any sort of popularity in mainstream culture have this thing happen to them, right? Where they start getting thrown around to the point of, like, it's hard to even have a conversation around it and figure out what they actually are. So to start off, I feel like I need to ask the most basic question, because I like to begin my show as just defining like terms and whatnot. How would you define manifestation in the simplest form?
And the simplest form manifestation is choosing the reality you want and attracting the opportunities to yourself to have that reality.
That makes sense. So what would make manifestation different from really any other type of practice that does this, right? We see terms like spell, ritual, all these different terms, like, or is manifestation like a broad term that encompasses all of it? Like, where does manifestation sit in reference to other similar ideas?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So the biggest thing is that it's not witchcraft. You can use witchcraft to manifest, but witchcraft is not manifestation. In the sense of really any other like religion or practice, not that manifestation's a religion, but people tend to ask for things. Witches, will do a spell. Christians, Muslims, all different religions will pray, and that's sort of asking for something. Whereas manifestation is not necessarily praying to a god or higher power. It is literally selecting the reality that you want, knowing that there are an infinite amount of realities to select from. So picking the one that you want to be your path and choosing to encompass the person that shows up every day and lives that path, and through that attitude and those mannerisms attracting that new reality.
So when you're manifesting, would you say call on a spirit, or would you more use your internal will to do that? Is it a sort of self-driven act, or is it an externally driven metaphysical act?
It's a self-driven act, and so I think that's the big thing that separates the two, is you're not necessarily traditionally in manifestation, like calling upon someone else to help you. It is more of a mindset. It's not more of a spiritual practice. Spirituality deals with kind of a lot of times external factors that we don't fully understand, and that is 100% valid. But that is not what manifestation is. Manifestation is calling upon the power within yourself to know that if you can think of something, it can be done. It can be a reality, and choosing that path. So it is just tapping into the power within yourself.
That's interesting because in Western esotericism, specifically, I hear it discussed the most in Thelema and the traditions that came after that. This idea of like will. Like there's this sort of internal force within a person that is their sort of destiny, their path, right? And that has this big driving power that then sort of impacts all the magic and all the things we do throughout our lives. Do you think manifestation has any connection to this idea of like will? Or is it a sort of different concept?
I think it could have a connection. A lot of it is, I mean, yeah, I definitely think it could, because it is mindset. It is, um, a lot of it deals with like confidence and knowing that you are capable of something. And I do think that that takes will, and I do think that that takes patience with oneself. And, I mean, everyone to some extent will deal with self doubt throughout their lives, like everybody. So I think just being able to push through that can definitely deal with will. But I think a lot of it too is, um it deals with the mindset more so of keeping your mind clear, in the sense of just not getting stuck in the 3D, because the 3D is a manifestation of the past. So what we're seeing right now, like today, is something that we've manifested in the past, intentional or not. So when we manifest, we are speaking in the present tense, even though it's not here yet. So for example, the example I always use is, a wealthy person is never going to say, I will be wealthy. A wealthy person is going to say, I am wealthy. I am rich. I love my $1 million bank account. And it's creating the reality that you want, but pushing through, and speaking in present tense, even though it hasn't actually shown itself in the 3D.
So, when people say dwell really hard on the negative or kind of focus intensely on negative things happening to them, in a sense, are they doing a kind of like negative manifestation that then sets them up for a like bad path?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I think, and I have noticed too that when people, look too much to the 3D to be like, well, my manifestation hasn't happened yet. This must be fake. Then that just continues to manifest for themselves, and they don't end up having what it is that they are manifesting. So I think a lot of it um, is focusing on what we want our lives to be, and but at the same time acting as if we are already there. I think that is a huge step into stepping out of, a toxic reality. So just, it's very very hard. I mean, when people say being delusional is the solution, being delulu is the solution, it 100% is, because it may not make any sense for, someone's present reality to be their dream reality. Like they may be in the most toxic, situation possible, and but you have to just act like you're already out of it, and then show up as the person who is out of it every day until you just walk into that reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so is it possible to like think you're manifesting something that's good for you, but then when you actually get there, it be something negative? Because that makes me wonder, like, if you're going to do these practices, wouldn't you kind of have to be contemplating a lot on what your actual true will is and what the actual like ideal circumstance for you is? Because what I've seen with people who are ritualist is, and I've done this myself at various points in time, they'll like do rituals for what they want, but not what they need, and then kind of end up negatively impacting themselves. Is this the case for manifestation? Like, do you need that really high level of self awareness on what you desire?
100%, 100%. I think it's the even though the practices are a little different, I think it's the exact same. Because for example, like one of the biggest things people ask me about how to manifest is like, how do I manifest my ideal lover? They usually have a specific person in mind, and so they'll spend a lot of time doing manifestations, and eventually, a lot of times, these people will end up with a specific person that they have in mind, but if you're not woke enough and spiritually healed enough to understand what it is you actually need, and not the toxic worldly egotistical things that you're craving, like you can easily manifest something toxic for yourself and not be realizing it. So you have to understand what it is you actually need.
So, when someone wants to attempt manifesting, where should they start? What's sort of the foundational first step?
The foundational first step is just like with really anything I think anyone should do in any kind of spiritual practice is setting your intention. So I'll probably say this 100 more times, but you have to select your reality. And I really think that we as humans can't even fully comprehend the amount of realities that there are to select from. Like if you believe that something is possible in the 3D, it is very possible. So the first thing is figuring out what that ideal path looks like. Is that going to be a specific career? Is that going to be, again, it could be a specific person, but we just need to think, woke with our third eyes and pick, not for the wrong reasons. But yeah, specific career, specific person, specific amount of money in our bank account, specific lifestyle that we're living. So just selecting that reality is going to be the first step. So yeah, there are 1,000 ways for us to manifest. There are probably more than that. And the way that we can manifest is going to be unique to every person. But the most popular form of manifestation that seems to be the most effective are looping audio affirmations. So verbally recording yourself saying affirmations as to what you are manifesting and playing them on loop. So there is a science to playing something in our ears while we're doing a mundane task like cleaning up or working out or shopping or going for a walk, and playing that in our ear and hearing it over and over and over and over and over again, to that hitting our subconscious. Because truly the limiting belief systems that are keeping us from believing we can have what it is we want are in our subconscious. Whether it is we grew up in poverty or we have limiting belief systems just based off of inferences we've gathered from people around us. So the biggest thing is record yourself saying what it is you are manifesting, and always speak in present tense, never speak in future tense. Like I mentioned earlier, a rich person is never going to say, I will be rich, because a rich person is already rich. They're going to say, I am rich, I am rich, I am rich. And keeping it short and simple to the point is usually best, so that there is just one specific phrase that can get stuck in somebody's head. There's a YouTuber named Sammy Ingram that I've watched for reference videos, and she's been super inspirational on manifestation. She posts a lot of stuff that's super great. And one of the things that she said that she used for looping audio affirmations was, all my videos go viral, I make $1,000 a day. All my videos go viral, I make $1,000 a day. All my videos go viral, I make $1,000 a day. And she said she recorded herself playing that or saying that, and she would play it over and over and over. And it worked for her. But it's simple and it's to the point, but it's enough of an impact that your subconscious can pick up on that. So a lot of it is playing audio affirmations. You can also write affirmations. I've seen a lot of success with that. I've seen people get journals dedicated just to manifestation. And so if that were your affirmation, all my videos go viral, I make $1,000 a day, you would fill up a page or two in your journal of saying that those exact lines. So just like 2 full pages of saying that every single day. And I've seen a lot of people talk about how much success that this has created in their lives. It does take a lot of dedication. A lot of people deal with a lot of stuff throughout our day-to-day lives, and like writing something on a piece of paper, the same thing over and over, is like not the most exciting task, but it does work. And there's many other ways. There's songs people listen to manifest, and when people listen to songs like that over and over, like that gets stuck in your subconscious. That's why it's also really important to be careful what we're feeding ourselves, like mentally and media wise. Yeah, and there's 100 more ways. Like I could keep going. I mean, you could write yourself a fake check. I think Jim Carrey actually did this. He was talking about how he wrote himself a $10,000 check before he was, rich and famous. And then he was able to actually cash that check for real years later when he scored a leading role. I think it was in Dumb and Dumber. But yeah, like writing yourself a fake check. can be huge if you're trying to manifest a certain amount of money. And then if you want to incorporate witchcraft into manifestation, some people will say, like, write yourself a fake check and then lay it under your pillow at night, and like something about the energy gets like absorbed into your brain. I do think there really is something to that, but strictly as far as just manifestation is just finding a way to create that reality, and stick it into your subconscious so that you're rewiring your brain. And when you're rewiring your mindset, you can bring that into the 3D. You can make it a reality. Once you can believe it and see it as a possibility, it comes to life. So
How would you know when to opt for a like simple manifestation technique versus a more complex like ritual? Like, since I know you do both of these things, what times do you go for either? Like, how do you select which is the way to go?
Honestly, I don't know that it really matters. I feel like I honestly feel like a lot of times it works either way, as long as you know what you're doing and you're doing it right.
Yeah, so you mentioned about the media and like consuming media impacting your psyche. Do you believe that like everything around us kind of seeps into us? And if so, like should we genuinely deliberately like avoid specific things for fear it might negatively affect our consciousness and mind?
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I think we are a lot of times just a combination of our surroundings. It is kind of dull and sort of neutral that sounds. Is I do think a lot of the things that we consume just become us. They say you are what you eat. I don't think that just applies to like literal food. I think that means you are what you eat, in the sense of what you consume is what you'll become. And I've caught myself doing this. I remember a few years back, I had watched a specific YouTuber's videos that's not a super great person, if I'm honest, but it was just something I was consuming because I was like, well, this is on. What's this about? And they have a certain like phrase and certain like language they were using, and I caught myself using that kind of language afterwards. And it wasn't like anything vulgar, but it was just a specific phrase that they say, like a little catchphrase, And I remember being like, wow, like I've never said this before. Why am I saying this? And then I thought back, I was like, oh, I was watching that specific YouTuber earlier. And it's just like, I wasn't even consciously like thinking about the words I was saying. I was just regurgitating some language that I'd heard before. So I think it's more impactful than we realize. And I think that's also why it's really important to also speak kindly about ourselves, even if we don't believe it, even if we're faking it till we make it. Because the more you say things, the more your brain takes them in. And our brains actually don't know the distinction between what we are joking about and what we're serious about. And that's another reason we have to be super careful of what we say. Because if you say something like, I don't even want to joke about it on the podcast because, if I hear it again, my brain might process it. But if you say something toxic about yourself, your brain will take that in. And even if you're just joking, your brain doesn't understand that you're joking. And so you can subconsciously start to believe these toxic things about yourself. And so, yeah, it's super, super important just to be careful about what we're saying. So bringing that back to manifestation is going to be, if you want to use this as a manifestation method, this can actually be a really good manifestation method, in the sense of, if you joke about something, your brain, again, it doesn't understand the difference. So if you're trying to manifest something, you can actually joke about something, especially if you're someone who jokes about things a lot in general, and that's kind of your personality. So, when people are trying to manifest like a specific partner, a specific person, or just get out of a toxic relationship and manifest someone who's going to be better for you, you could say something like jokingly to yourself, like, why are all these like perfect men obsessed with me? Why is the perfect partner always seeking me out? And like, just act like you're joking. Because again, that is, your brain doesn't understand the difference between joking and serious. And so that can actually be a positive thing, but it's just making sure that you're really careful about what you feed yourself, because the mind is a very powerful place, and the mind, it takes things in. So for sure, it's important to be careful about what we fill our minds with.
So, for a long time, I've argued that the spirits that we interact with, the gods, the deities, they seep into ourselves and affect who we are as people. And so, whatever you're spiritually surrounded by is going to seep into you. Do you agree with this theory? Does this kind of track with what you're getting at?
With spirits, I mean, yeah, I think it's possible. I mean, I don't understand necessarily like different people's practices, because I feel like different people have different ways that they interact with spirits, and some may be calling upon the spirit, and the spirit may not be coming into their energy specifically. Sometimes spirits don't answer, but I do think that depending on what kind of energies you work with, I think 100% like energies can come into our energies. Like that's how it works. And so I think that is important. And I also think that, and this is a little bit touchy of a subject, but I do think that there are a lot of people, especially modern like witches, who get into working with all sorts of different types of energies and negative energies and darker spirits. And I think that they don't realize how much of that energy they absorb. Now, if the left-hand path is your path, then that's fine. But I think you have to take some sort of understanding and accountability that if you're working with more dark spirits, more kind of like, spirits that are not as much known for positive, like love and light energy, that you will definitely absorb some of that energy. And if that's something you're okay with, then that's fine. But I think definitely practitioners do need to understand that there is some level of energy absorption there. And I do believe in using spiritual protection, using crystals and warding and whatnot. And I guess in some ways it is possible to work alongside of a spirit and not let them like fully consume your energy. But if you're working with something, it is very present there with you, and there definitely needs to be some sort of boundary. But I do think no matter what you're doing, you are going to become entangled in that energy in some sort of way. But there are ways to cleanse yourself. So it's just about being careful. And I think spiritual hygiene is something that we need to value more. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in our ways. And, I think it becomes a thing where we sometimes I've noticed practitioners sometimes will say that they're not absorbing energy, but they're not really being realistic with themselves. And that energy is definitely being absorbed into their aura. So I think it's just spiritual hygiene is big.
Yeah, I think you're completely onto something. I've seen a lot of new practitioners. This wasn't something I really saw until like witch talk got really huge. I see it a little less now, thankfully, where people were arguing that like cleansing and banishing are like spiritually harmful because it's like rude to the spirit. And I was like, what are you guys talking about? People have always been doing these things. You wouldn't not shower or not like tell someone like a friend of yours if they were sleeping on your couch.
Right.
You wouldn't tell them to, stay there forever. You would say like you need to go sometimes. It was crazy to me. And I'm like, and any spirit that's benevolent to you would understand that you need to take spiritual care of yourself. And I was like, that floored me when that became a discourse.
Yeah, 100%. And I noticed that you're one of the only few that actually, speaks out about that. And that's something I've always agreed with, is like, you need to do spiritual cleansing. You need to have spiritual hygiene. And some people say that it's rude to the spirits to like cleanse the space after working with the spirit. And it's not like it kills the spirit or something. People act like it like, kills the spirit. It's just cleansing their energy and the energy around you. It's important to have that hygiene, and it's also important to be aware of the energy that you're bringing present. I think there's a lot of people who do work with more baneful magic, and again, if that's the path, that's your choice. But it's just being aware that you are conjuring up a lot of negative energy, and if you want negative energy around you, if it helps you in your practice, then okay. But just having the awareness of like, if that's what you don't want, you need to be aware of that so that you can cleanse it and move that away.
Yeah, well, the hard truth is that the baneful stuff has a place, right? It's like there are times when that's necessary. You need, like, on a metaphysical level, mercy and severity are both necessary. But if you go so far down the baneful direction and you're not doing anything to kind of balance it out, that's going to negatively affect you, right? If we look to how, like, the ancients viewed it, people did both, baneful and benefic things. I think going only baneful is spiritually harmful to the self. I think you need some sort of balance and some sort of levity, because life is not only severity. There are other things that we need to develop. I think generally you should strive for some sort of balance on a spiritual level, and I find that a lot of harm happens in all sorts of directions, not just in the overly baneful direction, all like every direction, where people get so off balance that they just kind of like get ungrounded, and that I think harms the practitioner a lot.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a Libra, so I'm all about balance.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see with people who engage with manifestation and get negative outcomes? Because we've talked about how that sort of exists. So what are the big no-nos?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is people get stuck in the present tense and what we're seeing in the 3D. So like I mentioned before, everything that we are seeing in the 3D, everything that's happening today all day long, is something that is a manifestation of the past. Whether it was intentional or not, we created the reality we're in. And it may have just been a thing where we just didn't choose to change it, and so we just stayed on the same course. But when we are manifesting something and it's going to be our new reality, it's not quite here yet, but we're acting as if it's here, so it hurries up and gets here. But if we get so stuck on it not actually physically being here in the 3D, that's the biggest mistake that I see, is people just checking their watches, being like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And that sends you off into a negative spiral, and then that in turn manifests the manifestation to not happen. So getting stuck in the 3D, and also not believing in it. It kind of goes hand in hand, but not believing that we can move into this new reality. And authenticity is the highest vibration in the universe. So you have to authentically believe that you're going to have this thing for it to manifest into your life. And, this is another touchy subject, is depending on how you were raised, there may be a lot of unlearning you have to do in order to manifest. Some people were not raised as privileged as others, and so that's going to probably lead to limiting beliefs. So, you have to unlearn your past beliefs on what you are capable of having. And so that's going to deal with shadow work. And so you may even have to do affirmations for that before you can start doing actual manifestation affirmations. You could just dive into manifestation affirmations, but it may be a lot of like, I deserve good things, or I deserve money, or I deserve success, and doing those sorts of affirmations before you can genuinely, your subconscious will be able to absorb as much. I make $1,000 a day, all my videos go viral. Like, that just may be kind of a huge stretch for some people's mindset. So really believing is super important. And so, like I said before, it's cheesy, but being Delulu is the Salulu. And yeah, so the biggest mistakes are not believing and getting too stuck in the present tense. So I would say those are probably the two biggest mistakes people make.
I feel like you're getting at one of like the biggest things I see in people, which is I would call it like the victim mindset, right? It's like, well, bad things have happened to me. I've had a bad past. I came from a bad situation. And so inevitably, I'm going to keep ending up in these situations, right? It's this kind of despairing state where, like, oh, well, bad things happen, bad things will happen eternally. And that in and of itself is a complete negative manifestation. And it's something that I see in so many people. I've known some people with this mindset, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it even exists on like a cultural level, right? Like, this is almost like one of those endemic things in our society that just it's something people need to break past. Like, you are not inherently a victim, or if you were a victim in the past, it does not mean you'll be a victim into the future. It's this sort of assumption some people have of like, well, something happened in my past, then it will happen in my future. But our lives don't work like that, right? It's not like, well, we had a bad period, so the bad period's forever. That's not how like reality works.
Yeah, 100%. And it's interesting you bring that up, because that is actually the law of assumption. So what we assume is true will be true, and that is a form of manifestation in itself. So if you continue to assume that you're going to be the victim, you're going to have that negative outcome, you are going to continue to be in that outcome. And I fully get it. people would be very surprised to know I had an incredibly rough upbringing. I don't look like it at all, but I definitely had a rough upbringing, and choosing to know that, like, yes, my trauma is valid and the things that happen to me are not my fault, but owning it and understanding that, like, that did happen, but I'm not going to make the rest of my life being a victim, being someone who is just bad things happen to me because of that's how I was raised and I'm just a victim. Like, I can't continue my life like that. And it makes me sad when I see other people like that, because as much as it is hard to admit, our trauma is not our fault, but it is our responsibility. And that is such a tough pill to swallow, because we don't want to take responsibility of something toxic that wasn't our fault. But if something happened to you, you're the one who has to move past it. You have to do the shadow work. And I think that's one thing that probably isn't talked enough about in the manifestation community. It's a lot of, like, love and light. Like, it's so easy, just say the positive things. And it's like, there are mindsets that we have to unlearn. And I think that is a very good basis for getting into manifestation, is just moving out of the victim mindset. And I think no matter what your background is, what your skin color is, what your upbringing is, I think age, gender, all that stuff, I think that we can manifest stuff. I've seen so much of it, and I've seen so many people come from nothing and come from toxic backgrounds, but be able to unlearn that mindset and unlearn the mindset of, like, woe is me, like, bad things just happen to me, I'm just unlucky, like, those sorts of things, they have to be unlearned. But when someone is able to move out of that mindset and move out of, like, I'm not going to be a victim, I'm going to be a victor, and then start really getting into manifestation and doing manifestation practices, I think that you can create a really, really beautiful reality. And I've seen a lot of people.
Do you think that manifestation can be begun at any point? If you are in one of these situations where you have to get out of the victim mindset, do you think you can start manifestation immediately, or do you need to do, say, like, something like shadow work or introspection or contemplation first? Or can you kind of do these things in tandem at the same time?
I don't think you necessarily have to do shadow work first. I think you can do them in tandem at the same time. I think that it may take you longer, but I do think you can do it. You can do it all at once. I think the biggest thing is just learning to reprogram your subconscious. Your subconscious is what holds all those limiting beliefs. And it may even be your conscious too, like the forefront of your brain. Like, it may be right there in your brain, especially if you're saying it out loud, that you're a victim all the time. But yeah, I think anyone can start from just the regular manifestation process of just, saying affirmations and playing them on looping audio, recording yourself and playing them. But I do think that somebody who has years and years and years of trauma and, like, thinking that they don't deserve good things and having that negative mindset, I think they're going to have to play those affirmations a lot more than somebody who, is a super confident person and has had an easier life and maybe more privileged and had, a lot more luck in life. So I think sometimes there is going to be a longer process, but I think it can be the same process. But I do think that either works, if you want to go a different route and just solely focus on shadow work and then go into actually trying to manifest, I think that works the same. I think it would probably be the same amount of time, but it definitely will for sure take longer for someone who has those limiting beliefs.
So, do you think that these ideas can be superimposed onto any religion or paradigm, or are there specific, like, limitations or contraindications, right? Because I think, like, a lot of the stuff you're saying, I feel like could be applied broadly, but do you think there are, like, any religions or paradigms that sort of contradict it, or can it be applied broadly?
I can't speak for all religions because I haven't studied all religions. But what I can say is I think that anyone can do it. And I don't really think there should be, limitations. But I mean, if there is a belief system within a religion that says, you have to believe this, that, and the other, and you can't think for yourself, then that's going to be limiting if you follow that. But I found that it works for any person. So it's really just up to the path that you create. So.
That makes sense. So what would be like your first bit of advice? Like if you could only give one piece of advice, what would you give to someone who wants to try this stuff?
I would just say that mindset is everything. Mindset is everything. And when you start to believe that you can have what it is you want, you will attract it. So mindset is everything. And just, again, dumbing it down is just finding some sort of phrase to manifest with. And like I said, you can journal it and just write it down over and over and over, or you can play, like I said, again, play those looping audio affirmations. Some people even use like, and I know you said just one phrase, which would be mindset is everything, but just, speaking on other ways I thought about to manifest is, this is kind of like absolutely insane to be honest, but they have AI voice generators now. And so some people, I was talking to a friend about this, they looked at me like I was crazy, but I was like, what if you could find a video of the person who's going to interview you for a job talking, and you save that video and then make it into a voice generator and make them say, like, you're hired, like, I'm hiring you, Anna, I'm hiring you, and I think that is, there's just a lot of crazy ways to manifest. So there's so many different ways you can manifest, but the biggest thing to know is mindset is everything, and just figure out whatever that word or phrase is, or what your method of manifestation is going to be, and just do it over and over and over. So I guess mindset is everything, and consistency is key too. I see some people that will do like, they'll like spend an evening like meditating on their affirmations. They'll like, think of whatever phrase, and they'll close their eyes and like, say it in their head or whatever. And then they'll message me the next day and they'll be like, hey, I did my affirmations. When's it going to happen? And it's like, you can't just like always expect it to happen the next day. Like it might, but it's like consistency. If you're going to do some sort of manifestation ritual like one time and then just expect the next day to just have endless plethora of opportunities, like, I love that you're being delusional, I think that's great, you're on the right path, but I think that you need to know that it's also not just being delusional, quote unquote. It's like being consistent with your affirmations, because you are reprogramming your subconscious. So consistency is key, and mindset is everything.
So once you finally get whatever your affirmation was for, do you continue doing the affirmation to maintain what you have, or do you move to something else? Like, is there like a requirement of maintenance once you get your goal?
I really don't necessarily think there is. I think once you have something, it's yours. But I think if you start to slip into those limiting beliefs again, I think it's important to go back to those affirmations. And what I learned recently, and I don't know if this is more of, manifestation or spirituality or witchcraft, probably just a form of spirituality, is the universe will bless you with so many things when you express gratitude out loud. When you literally thank universe, spirit, God, gods, whatever energies you believe in. I usually just say spirit, universe, for the blessings that you have. And you're like, thank you so much for this, $1,000 a day paycheck and making my videos go viral. Thank you so much for this. Like, I love this. I want to see more opportunities like this. The universe seems to bless people with more opportunities like that, like similar ones. And I genuinely believe that the universe is sort of like a person who gives someone a gift, because it is a gift. When you have a blessing, it's a gift. And I think that when it's a holiday and you're giving somebody a present and somebody's like, thank you so much, I'm so excited about this is such a blessing, I think we as people are going to want to give that person more gifts. It's like, oh my goodness, they had such a great experience with me, like, I want to bless them with more stuff, I want to make them more happy, they deserve good things. But if you give somebody a gift on a holiday who doesn't say thank you, who just kind of looks the other way and is like, I don't deserve this, and like they don't smile about it, they're not excited, you're not going to want to give that person more presents, more gifts. And so I genuinely think that the universe operates on a similar frequency of, like, when we get blessings, if we're not grateful and we don't express that happiness and enthusiasm about it, I think that we don't get as many blessings, because I think the universe is like, well, I don't want to give this person more good things if they just don't care or don't appreciate it. So It's 222 where I live right now.
Yeah, so when we talk about like this gratitude for divinity, that's often the term I use for these things. I just think I like as a word. But there are many words: the Godhead, God, the universe, the oneness,
Sure, yeah.
whatever you want to call it, right?
Entities.
How should we express gratitude? Like, should we just like, live joyfully? Should we give offerings? Should we do verbal things? Like, how do you think we should express gratitude once we've gotten what our goal was?
I think all of those are valid. The way that I personally do it is just verbal gratitude, just literally like praying out loud, like, thank you, spirit, thank you, universe. Like, I want to see more of this. I'm so excited about this. And in my personal life, I started doing this and plethoras of opportunities have presented themselves like out of nowhere. And so, I mean, I think, but I've also tried, personally doing just living happily and living freely. And I feel like that kind of can be conveyed through some of like, some stuff you see online of me, like photos and videos, just happy. I don't know if you ever look on my Instagram, but I like to go spend time in nature and waterfalls. And I'm always just having like such a happy time and just excited to be alive. Cause I'm just like, wow, like, thank you, God, thank you, universe, for this beautiful, just nature piece you're just blessing me with the gift of being able to see. So I think 100% that's valid too. Going to live just joyfully and just happily and not, moping around all day like this, looming cloud of darkness over us. And that's not to say like mental illness is not valid. Like a lot of people deal with mental illness, depression and stuff, but trying, even if you deal with something like that, just trying to live so thankfully and joyfully and with a grateful heart. I think just all of those things are valid.
Do you think people who suffer with mental illness should approach manifestation related practices with a bit of caution, or do you think it can be beneficial for them as well? Because I know that's been a big debate in the esotericism community for a really long time. I've heard it less over the past few years of generally like, should people with mental illness engage with these subjects for fear of it, maybe worsening their condition, or is it like a way out of it? Because that's the counter argument a lot of people make. Like, if you have a mental condition, that like esotericism and religion can be one of the like best cures. Like, where do you think you stand on this issue in regards to manifestation?
Yes. So that's an amazing question. And I like that we're talking about this because this is, one of those topics that's, it's debatable and it's I feel like it needs to be talked about. And I do feel like I'm qualified to talk about it because I deal with depression, anxiety, and I also have post-traumatic stress disorder from car accidents and, other really traumatic things that have happened to me in my life. And I've dealt with not just like the little light tinges of like depression, like, oh, I feel sad today, but like genuinely like not wanting to be alive, not wanting to get out of bed, like considering taking my own life, not to get too dark of a place. But for me, in my personal experience, I think that, and I also believe this for other people, not just because it's my experience, but because of what I've witnessed, that manifestation is a healer. And I'm not going to say, don't take your medication or don't do what the doctor says. Obviously do that if that is your path. And I do take medication for the things I deal with as well, alongside of, my manifestation practices. So I believe in magic and the mundane, but I will say that for me, like changing my mindset was huge. And I think that kind of brings us back to where we were talking about, should you do shadow work before you go into manifestation, or should you just start the manifestation practices? And, I was saying both are valid, both would work. And I think for people who deal with depression and other mental illnesses, I think just diving right into reprogramming your mindset, not doing the whole shadow work thing, just knowing you're doing your manifestations, playing your audio affirmations over and over, or writing those positive words in a journal, and not just doing that and knowing that you're going to have to do it a while, can really, really reprogram your mindset and really, really help you on that path. Like, does it heal it? I don't know necessarily. I think it helps significantly though. And I think that it is something that needs to, I honestly think that it's a necessity. And even if you're just trying to manifest like having a better day, like literally, I think actually it's interesting that came up. I forgot about this. When I was really like in some of my darkest hours, I made myself affirmations of like, this is what I'm going to believe. Maybe it's not a manifestation, but it's definitely an affirmation. And I think affirming this in my head every day made me manifest, having a happier belief system. And so I was like, what is something I can say every day that's just going to put me in a better mood, just to get the day started, just some sort of thing. And so I was like, what can I do to like counter what I feel? And so I believe you have to say something 65 times to get it stuck in your head. So I made it a point to write something down and say it 65 times. And that was, I am happy, I am thankful, I'm content. I'm happy, I am thankful, I'm content. I'm happy, I'm thankful, I'm content. And I think that really started to reprogram my mindset of every day sucks, like, life's not worth living. Because when you do get in that mindset, like, yes, again, it's 100% valid to deal with that and to have depression. But I think when you get to a negative mindset, you can just spiral and get more and more negative. It's always easier to pull somebody down off of a ladder, for things to go worse than it is to somebody to pull you up and get to the top of the ladder and for things to get better. So just making sure I'm going out of my way and saying those things was definitely huge for me in that. And I think it's vital.
Yeah, so for my final question to you, what should people do to learn more about this after the podcast if they want to, take the next step and learn a bit more and begin a manifestation practice? Where should people look? What should people read? Where should they go?
Yeah. So shameless plug. You can always find me on TikTok, Witchy Girl Anna, and Instagram, Witchy Girl Anna. But I know that I'm not the end all be all. There's plenty other people out there that post and share about it. And I think just remembering that it is unique to you and finding what works for you and finding your method of manifestation is kind of more important than finding, just getting loads of information off the internet or, reading books about it. Like I mentioned earlier, I think Sammy Ingram is an amazing YouTuber. I've been watching her YouTube videos, and she is probably one of the only people that I really trust sharing, like, their name or whatever. Also, like a mutual of mine, her name on TikTok is Divinity by Missa. Divinity by Missa, she's mutual, and she I definitely trust a lot of what she shares about manifestation. But again, it's just like, I think, not to curve away from that question too much, but I do think that one problem that I see within, the esoteric community, witchy community, manifestation community, and people just trying to learn new things and implement them, is that sometimes we get so caught up in learning new things and trying to get new tips and new angles that we don't actually continue to put in the actions of just doing what we know works. And what we know works is doing those affirmations and doing them consistently, and just trying to unlearn any negative limiting beliefs. So I think just focusing more on the actions is going to be more important than just taking in new information. But those are definitely two people that I recommend and trust sharing their info and recommending them. So just remembering to take the actions is huge. But that's what I've got today.
Thank you so much, Anna. If you guys, anyone listening, wants to check her out, all her links are in the show notes and under the YouTube. If you want to find me, I'm Georgina Rose or Darling on every platform under the sun. I'm on Instagram, Telegram, TikTok, Substack, YouTube, everywhere. There's really nowhere I'm not. And I host the show, obviously. And if you want to support the show is supported through Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you get my solo pre-show with every single episode that I record before my guest joins. You get a extra episode every Neo-Pagan Sabbats. That's 8 a year, 8 bonus episodes. And if you're one of our highest benefactors and you really keep the show going, you get your name read out every single episode. So thank you to Abka and Charlotte Dickon. Thank you so much for your continued support. And I will see you all in the next one. Have a nice day, night, mid-morning, mid-afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are.